Hello and welcome to Caching Waves. This is an update for Bitcoin. Going to be going over the macro and the micro counts, but I just wanted to give a little perspective on Bitcoin. I know there's a lot of analysis that are bearish, bullish, all in between, and sometimes it's best just to zoom out and take a look at the probabilities in the longer term and the shorter term. I've marked off each one of the halvings. We have one coming up. First of all, let's take a look back at the one in 2012. As you can see, into the halving, we kind of drifted sideways, went up a little bit. In 2016, we had a correction right after the halving. It's actually larger than it looks. It's just because I'm on log scale. Everything gets squashed a little bit, but it was about 40%. Over here, we had the correction into the COVID low here before the halving, and then we took off afterwards. So it's up in the air what's going to happen here. But if we look at the RSI, we peaked out at about 83 on this last move up. And if we look back in history where we peaked out, we came up shy there during the COVID sell-off here. But that was right before. You can see we sold off pretty hard. Coming back here, we sold off pretty hard. And another one we came close was back here. We sold off pretty hard. So historically, if we're not in a strong uptrend, you can see here we did too, but we had small corrections right after. That we haven't been this high on the RSI on the weekly in a long time. So looking at that, you might be a little bit weary about holding right now. I'll show you my counts. I have a pretty bullish count. I have a bearish count, and I have a bearish one that is bullish in the short term. Now, first of all, let's go down to the daily, and I'll show you what I mean. So one thing I am still unsure of is if the high is over here in a 5-wave impulse, or if this is all a 4th wave in itself. And this is our 1, 2, 3, 4, which we haven't overlapped. We came deep, but we didn't overlap. And we're going for 5 up from here. If that's the case, I would expect us to make a 5-wave pattern here and then probably correct pretty close to the halving or just after it. Or if this is the high and this is the low, then this could be the beginning of a larger impulse where we do make that eventual touch way up here somewhere out in the future. So going from our low here, I ran a bunch of fibs on log scale and linear to see what made the most sense. And the one that makes the most sense to me is if this is a wave 1 here and we had a fast sell-off and it wasn't a flat in a correction, and then we have our second one too. Now on log scale, you can see we did not hit the 1-to-1. Usually I'd expect us to stop at the 618 here in green, but we didn't. And all that would do for my adjustments is I would expect us to get a extended wave in this impulse. As you can see, for my 3rd wave on log, I've just hit the 236, and so that's in blue on the micro. The targets are in blue as well, and I would expect this 5th wave of the 3rd to only come to the 1.618. If we hit the 1.618, I'd expect between the 2 and the 2.382, but we didn't hit that on log scale, so I'd expect something like this before going up for our 5th. Now, if we look on linear scale, we went through the 1-to-1 for our second 1-2, which is not what we would expect to happen. It doesn't mean it can't, but it's improbable to get a large 1-2, 1-2. Although we did get that on altcoins. Now, another reason I like this count as well is we did hit the 1.618 extension on linear for our 3rd in this count. Expect to hold at the 100 or between the 236 and the 382 of this fourth wave, and move up between the 200 and the 2.382 for our fifth of our third, which is around 52K, just above this sell-off point here. But you can see if we go on log on linear, targeting 52K at the 1.618 on log, targeting 52K at the 2.236 on linear. So both those match up where I'd expect to be, around 52K, if this is the bullish impulse in the bullish scenario. Now, if this is a fourth wave we're working on, there's some rules we need to keep in mind. First of all, we can't overlap with this one, so we should mark that off. Wave 4 invalidation. That's at $31,035, as you can see, and this is on Bitstamp. So we need to hold that level. I would expect us to hold also. I wouldn't want to hold past, where is my box? There we go. I would want to hold above this proposed previous fourth wave in the micro. As you can see, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this area, I'd want to hold. I wouldn't want to break that level as well to keep this intact. And obviously, the absolute invalidation of the wave 4 is overlapping the wave 1. And we can go further with that. We can put on our fibs. For our third wave. And I would want to hold the 50. And I'd look to buy between the 382 and the 236, this fourth wave, which puts our box right in this area. For our buy, we're looking at 38,961 on log, and on linear, about 40K to 37,000. But you can see we're holding this pivot. That's the important thing. So if I were trading this, that's where I would look for my long in this area. Stop probably just below this pivot here, just past the 50. And I would be targeting all-time highs, getting about 6 to 1 here. This is what I'd look for in our bullish scenario. And the question is that the all-time high where this is a 3-4 and we get our fifth, and we get our fifth here, and then we expect a larger ABC correction before moving to the upside? That's the question. We won't know until those waves form out, but that's why it's so tough with this area. Is this a completed impulse? We have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because I can count this either way. Or is this a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And then we have to make a correction here in this area after. So that's what I'm looking at for my bullish case. I would expect, again, to hit about 52,000 after this for our third of our third. Our fifth of our third, my apologies. And then expect a correction down to around between 40 and 45,000, and eventually targets up here between 74 and 83,000 to all-time highs. So that's what I'm looking at for the bullish count. Another thing you can look at here, I also put on a pitchfork. This is the best one I've been able to find that it's been sticking to. It's not super bullish. As you can see, we just hit the median line from it. We're going to drift out of it at some point. But if you put it in a channel, modified pitchfork is a channel, it should hold within this. And the pivots I'm using is the second one too. And that seems to be working pretty well. All right, so that's the bullish scenario. Now to show you my bearish scenario. This needs to go in my bullish case. So does this. Sorry, just moving stuff for a second here. There we go. Now my bearish scenario. This is what I'm looking for. If this is the start of something as an A wave, then I'm expecting we're in a much larger B wave. And how I have this is we have an ABC for W wave and a double zigzag. We then had a complex X wave, and we're now working on another zigzag. We have 5 up. We're working on our B and our C to the upside. Now I find this one interesting just because we saw those sell-offs in history just before or just after the halving. Now I would propose, it's difficult to know how high this C wave is going to go. Usually a extended C wave goes between the 1.236 and as high as the 1.618 of this first W wave. So it's kind of in between. It could be 50K, literally, which would be pretty nasty, because if our correction completed there, we'd have a pretty nasty sell-off. I'd expect a 1-to-1 extension of this wave, at least a 618. So we'd be expecting all-time lows after that. Not all-time lows, but lows before this below this previous low, before we can consider it complete. So the higher this goes, the more bullish it will be in the future, if I put it that way. I would prefer even making all-time highs. This here is our B wave, expanded B wave. And the reason I have that up is if we do just chop up very ugly and we don't make an impulse, I would expect us to come as high as 98,000 to 122 before getting a pivot to the downside, and then making all-time highs after that, where this becomes a flat correction in itself. Like so, higher high, lower low, but the correction is actually complete over here, and then we get 5 waves up. Now that scenario is my primary. I'm pretty neutral at this moment, but looking at the larger term weekly we talked about before over here, to me that's kind of the best way. If we get this move here, make all-time highs, we then make a quick retracement here where this is running flat, and then we take off for our 5th wave. Like that just looks right. Again, nothing says it can happen, but it just looks right to me, where this ends up being a flat correction in itself, like so, and we make our 5th wave up further, way down in the future. So this is my primary count, and the good news with that is, as you can see, we still have this C wave to make to the upside. Now, if that bullish scenario doesn't play out, I'm probably going to trade both of them eventually. I'm just going to give this a lot more time to finish. I would expect this A wave to come between the 50 and the 618 here. It should find support above these highs here. If we break below those, and we break this level, we're in pretty big trouble. But I expect us to find support in this area. If we go on linear scale, we can actually find support in this previous correction here and not come that low. But anywhere between 31,000 and about 35,000 looks good for this setup. And obviously your stop would be at this previous low here. So if you can get in somewhere around this area, stop at that low. Still a pretty nice trade where you get 2, 3 to 1, right? Easier to see here. Something like this, 3, 4 to 1, depending how high we come. But again, it can become pretty extended because if this is a larger ABC, can come as high as 122,000, which is way above the previous high, as you can see, before getting that crash. And then we finally get our move up after that. So it'll be a very interesting area to watch once we get there. So that is my bullish scenario, or my bearish scenario. And what would I expect to happen after this? Even if we came up a little bit shy, this is where complex corrections can get pretty frustrating if you don't know what to look for, because all this ends up being is a double zigzag, right? Which is actually can be a larger A, B, C, something like that. Again, we still come up to that area where this is a larger B, where B waves can take forever, and we can still get that flat this way, and then we move to the upside, something like that, where it gets extended out. But either way, our hard stop is down here at around 25K. And once we get moving, kind of let it run and trade it on the micros. I would prefer to scalp this setup myself, in and out quick. But there is one more scenario that we just crumble from here, which would be very ugly for everything. And I'll show you that. Get rid of all that. Okay, as you can see, we've passed through the 618 on log scale. On linear, we're not quite there. But if for whatever reason we break down here and just absolutely collapse, and we just break this low, come back to the 618, come down, come down, come down, and find support in this previous area, the count, I see where that is possible. Again, it kind of freaks me out a little bit, but until we break this level, those other two counts are my primaries. And what that would look like is a WXY, where we have a double zigzag here, ABC, that's our W. Our X wave actually finished here, and this is a expanded flat, ABC, since we have 5 waves complete here. As you can see, it's technically correct. We made an expanded flat here. Just want to check those fibs real quick. If we were to pull from here, this is rough, but because C waves can come and expanded flats and hit like the 2.618 even. So we came just shy of that, 2.382. And that's on log scale. How did we do on linear? As you can see on linear, we hit that 2.618. So it does freak me out a little bit. I haven't seen anybody I've seen talk about Bitcoin see this And it would look like this: ABC, and then our flat here, ABC, as you can see. So double zigzag and a flat, or a zigzag and a flat, W, X, Y, and we absolutely collapse here. So that's the way we collapse on Bitcoin. And that would take us to around 10K. If we took the 1-to-1 extension of this first wave or complete here, that would take us to 10K. So there's your possibilities. Now if we broke this level here, that's where that count becomes most probable in itself. And we'd expect to see 5 waves down here, and then probably a retest, and then we collapse. So that's it for Bitcoin, guys. I wanted to show you those setups. Both are pretty good for the long trade. Again, I'm just going to get rid of this one. So there's our long setup. Obviously we can't overlap. Look between the 236 and the 382. Stop just past the 50 or the overlap, depending on how you like to trade fourth waves. And the bearish setup, very similar. Looking for the 50 and the 618. Stop at the same low. So both in play, and we'll see what happens. All right, guys, that's the macro update on Bitcoin. I will do some micro updates coming up. Just busy with the holidays coming up, and I look to have a more of a regular schedule where I update several coins daily. I'm looking forward to doing that, so make sure to subscribe if you want to see that. And thanks for watching.